Welcome to my channel. I'm Justin Davis of Drone Camps RC, and today we're talking about a drone that you can fly around the Cairns. Something that the local soccer moms are not going to come diving out of their minivans to ask you a million questions about. Is that a drone? Is there a camera on it? Blah, blah, blah. So many questions, so many over-policing out there in the world today that it's hard to have a good time without someone, kind of being like, hey, what the hell are you doing? None of your business what I'm doing. I'm flying my drone, leave me alone, right? That rhymes. I'm flying my drone, leave me alone. So today, without further ado, it's the Happymodel Crux NLR version. This is the non-GPS version. 135 bucks. Strap an 18650 battery to it and get 15 minutes flight time out of this battery. So yeah, that's a cheap way to get flying with analog on there. You don't have to worry about DJI goggles on this one. I think that this one performed pretty good. We're going to talk about the tune on it today. We're going to talk about the value, the flying capability, the flight time, maybe the durability of this little guy. But most importantly, you can keep the Cairns away with this one because it is super quiet up in the air versus something like a 5-inch quad. This 5-inch quad brings Cairns out of the woodworks. So if you want something that's quiet and something that you can fly indoors or outdoors and access batteries pretty much anywhere, the Crux3 NLR is a pretty good choice. So, and at a pretty good price. Flying it today on the 2.4 gigahertz Slim Pro from Happymodel. They have their own ELRS module as well. It fits with a converter into the TX16S, which we're going to fly it on today. We're going to bind that up and go out there and do a little bit of range flying with this guy. This little guy will go miles out on the SPI version of the built-in ELRS receiver. That's pretty cool that these are coming now with a built-in ELRS receiver. So thanks to Happymodel and other guys like Beta FPV, they are making those boards now for you guys. So let's go out and test it, give it a flight test. And oh yeah, by the way, make a comment on this video down below because we're giving away that Flywoo quad this month. So get in on that, little miniature Cinewhoop. You can check out the link down below. Subscribe, make a comment, send us an email at dronecamps.com. You're entered to win. So let's go out and do some non-Cairn flying. So I was not harassed by any Cairns today in the making of this video. Here we go. All right, guys, let's do the flight test of the Crux3 NLR. Now, first taking off, I did have a little bit of battery sag on this battery, so I wasn't expecting a full 17 minutes out of it, but the good news is that I did get 14.5 minutes on this battery. Under load, it went down to 3.8 volt. You can see that on the bottom left of the screen right there. You can see my signal on the top right of the screen. You have also the throttle position on the right hand, the second one up, and then my flight mode is right now I'm in air mode, in acro mode. You can also fly it in your stability mode, but right now I'm just cruising and I'm getting a feel for this quad. The tune on here feels a little bit soft. I wouldn't say it's like a freestyle type of tune. I would say it's more like a nice smooth flying long range type of tune. You want to soften up the controls a little bit, maybe get a little more cinematic type of video. This is a good tune for that. You also have the fly timer down at the bottom left. That is fly timer number 2. I always put that one on the screen because that one is from the time of the arming of the quad, not turning it on. Timer 1 is from the time the quad's turned on. So I like my actual flight time when the motors are spooled up to be shown on the screen. Now also it shows my amp draw there at the top left, maxing out about 10 amp or so. I have 610 milliamp I'm used there. You can see the milliamp are just getting consumed. But the cool thing is that when you're flying a Li-ion type of battery, keep a watch on that single battery voltage right there. This is 1S battery voltage, 3.4 right there. And I've been flying for 5 minutes and I've only used not even a fraction of a volt. It's so cool that these Li-ions will just chill on a certain voltage forever. It seems like forever. I mean, 12 minutes. And I think 12 minutes flight time, I was still at around 3 volt. And you can run this battery all the way down to like 2.8 volt. On this particular drone, you want to make sure that you're back to your landing zone when you hit 2.8 volt. Just the rule of thumb with Lion, you want to be back to the home point by the time your average cell voltage reaches 2.8 volt. You just keep trying to drive that home for the beginner guys out there. Lions die really quickly, and I drove this one all the way down in this flight test just to show you guys how it will tank at the end of an 18650 battery. It's kind of crazy. Just like all of a sudden drops all the power you have. It's like, you know, when you lose your power steering in your van, all of a sudden it becomes a tank. It happens all of a sudden with an 18650 battery. But what a cruiser out there at like 10.5 minutes there, almost 11 here. And I sped it up a little bit because this would be a really long video if I didn't. But it almost feels like an airplane, way up high. No one can hear it. No Karens are harassing me. And I'm just cruising with this little guy. And this would be a nice kind of entry-level, long-range type of flyer without a lot of consequence. Now, another thing to note about this quad is that I love sharing this kind of information with you guys. When you come down to the bottom of your battery, and this quad is still sitting there at a low voltage, the beeper goes off. So when you get down to that 2.8, I believe that my low voltage alarm was set to 2.9. So when I came in for a low voltage landing, the beeper stays on and beeps. So if you're out in the grass somewhere, you're going to find it. But the tune was okay. We saw a little bit of jello in this, a little bit of vibes up way up high, and that's where you usually see it. But check out the voltage. Pay attention now. We're at 14 minutes there. 2.8 volt. I should be right back at my feet at this point. Now look at it tank. 2.7, 2.6. Oh man, that's the end of that battery, and I can't even fly at this point. So isn't that cool? Yeah, time to recharge that battery. Definitely don't want to fly it down to like 2.5. All right, guys, welcome back from the flight test. 64 grams on the scale, and with a single 18650 battery, that gets us up to 108 grams total takeoff weight. So way underneath that 250 gram mark for the FAA registration. You don't have to register the Crux3 NLR. That is pretty sweet. So it does have a pretty decent VTX on here. The VTX on here actually is from Happymodel. It's built in. It's onboard 5.8 gigahertz up to 200 milliwatt. Now, 200 milliwatt, I say decent. Some of the other ones out there that are only running an 18650, it doesn't have a lot of power to run your video transmitter. So the nice thing about this one having 200 on here is that some of the other ones out there only have 25 milliwatt. And I know I've talked about this before, like 25 milliwatt can go miles out. People do tests on YouTube all the time, look it up, like just type in like 25 milliwatt miles out and you'll probably get some videos. But you can crank this one up to 200. Once you do that, it is gonna probably bring down your total flight time because it's pulling more juice from the battery. But I think that it's nice that you have the option to bring it up to 200, because if you're just doing a close-in 10-minute quick flight, say around out to a mile or so, this is kind of a nice way to cruise and have clean video. Having 200 milliwatt running on this makes a huge difference between having nice solid clear video and running 25 where it's kind of chopping up a lot of times. So during my flight test, I ran it on 25 just to see how it would do with, you know, say 2 or 3, 4 football fields out. It did pretty good. And once it really gets away from you a little bit, you can't hear this thing going down the street. It is virtually silent. So really awesome to avoid the Karens. And at 109 grams, it's nice. We have 12 series motors on here. We've got onboard SPI, Express LRS, 2.4 gigahertz receiver. I guess they're coming out with 900 megahertz receivers coming up soon, but I think this is a pretty nice looking transmitter module from Happymodel. This version has a metal casing around it, and you can use it with the slim version like this, or you can plug it into like a converter for the full-size JR Bay. Beta FPV makes this one, and I tried and tested this with the Slim Pro from Happymodel, and it actually works. So that's nice that this one works with either the Beta FPV module, that's the white one, or this super nice one from Happymodel. I feel like this one's a nicer construction. This one has no external buttons on it. Just plugs right in. It does have a micro USB port right here. And once you're bound up to it, so simple, you go into Betaflight, you type in bind_RX while a battery's plugged in, and then the flight controller built-in receiver starts to go into auto bind mode. You go into your Lua script section in your system menu in your TX16S. If you're running some type of OpenTX with that Lua script, you just go right to ELRS and you basically click on bind, and bam, this little light on here turns green and you're good to go. So that's pretty nice. The output power on this is about 12 dB, so that's pretty hardcore. And the setting in your controller you want to have set to external crossfire CRSF, so that way it binds up with this guy, so it would actually power this receiver. But it works good with my TX16S. One thing I had was an issue where my throttle was kind of jumping up and down, and to get that to stop doing that, I had to adjust my endpoints down below 1,000 to get this little guy to arm, because with that throttle moving up and down, that was kind of a bug, an issue in the system. So with my particular radio, if you have that problem, just adjust your throttle endpoint down below 1,000, or change the offset it, say like 5% below 0, -5, and it'll arm once you flip that arm switch. So one tip out there for the interwebs, hopefully you guys don't experience that, but if you do, that's how to fix it. So I did mention that this is 200 milliwatt VTX on here, which is nice. We have the Happymodel option to add the M8N GPS, and you still have a slot for it back here. If you want to add that later, this flight controller has enough tabs on here to be able to add GPS, which is super cool. And I believe it's the only GPS that's working with this one right now, is the M8N. It has GLONASS on there and standard GPS, which should let you get up to around 12 to 15 satellites on takeoff. The cool thing about that is if you fail safe, your quad won't fall to the ground. Now, when I was flying this, I did have a few times when my transmitter said signal loss, but the quad did not drop to the ground. So I do have it set to drop to the ground in Betaflight, but this quad just kept flying through it. So that's a good news about that. Even though I was getting an audio signal from the radio saying that, hey, I lost signal, I wasn't dropping into the woods when it said that, because it was alarming to hear this guy say signal loss, and like, oh God. Typically without GPS, you're going to go straight into the woods. So then you got to go find it. But this one does have a full-size beeper on here as well, tucked in here. So that's really nice, because this guy is super loud. I did fly one battery down to its limit you can fly these Lions down to about 2.8 under load. So 2.8 volt. That's pretty much about the safe point before you damage this battery. It will get super hot and possibly explode if you fly it down to like 2.5 volts. So don't do that. On your screen, you need to have telemetry up and set your safe setting to about 2.8 volt and be back to the home point when it reaches 2.8. Because I'll tell you, 18650 Lions, when they get low, this little guy dies quickly, and they die faster than LiPos. Almost immediately you're going down to the ground and you have to land this little guy. So if you're coming down the sidewalk and you're down to like 2.7 or 2.6, that means that this little guy is landing. Even if you're full throttle, she's coming in for a landing. So hopefully those tips help you out in your 18650 Lion flying. Way different than LiPo flying. So you get a little more room with the LiPo to get back home and a little more power. Also, we have the Cadex Ant up front, and I've been enjoying this camera because it is 1200 TBL. It can be NTSC or PAL. It can also switch between 16:9 or 4:3, and it's only a few grams in weight. They also have a mount up front. If you want to fly like my favorite camera right now, which is that 30-gram Firefly X Lite, this could carry a Firefly X Lite on here, which is freaking sweet. You'll get a little less flight time, obviously, carrying a decased GoPro style camera up here, but all those videos you guys have seen me make flying into the trees and through the canopy, you can lower this camera angle down to almost say like 5% or 10%, and then you can do some canopy exploration with this quad, because you know what? This little guy is super stable. And speaking of that, let's talk about the tune on here. The tune was okay. I wouldn't say that the tune is perfect on here. I would say it's okay. In my rating, if I was to rate it, I'd say 3.5 stars out of 5. I feel like the tune could be a little bit better on this particular quad. There's probably some PIDs out there, some rates that you can put on here that will kind of smooth things out a little more. The day that I did my flight test, it was a little windy, so if you're flying on a nice calm day, it should be a nice smooth flight. If you have a lot of wind with something this small, it's going to be a little more bumpy, especially if you're carrying an action camera up there, but your video will still turn out pretty good, even on a bumpy day if you're having some kind of electronic image stabilization on your sport camera. That will definitely work out for you. These are the EX 12025 motors, and it looks like these are 11,500 kV motors on here. So those are not super high kV. I'm glad that these aren't like 15,000, because that would just be drawing too much amp out of the 18650. But I think this is kind of a cool combo, you guys. Like the 2.4 Slim Pro, once I was able to get that throttle part worked out, it was great. I just went out and flew this little guy, and I had no problems during the flight test. You want to make sure that your 18650s are newer than older ones. If you buy this, just start out with a couple brand new ones and a charger. I'll try to put some links down below to some 18650s that are going to be cheaper than the Amazon ones, and a charger you can just slap these into. It takes a couple hours time to charge one of these, so a little longer charge time than something like a LiPo. You can quick charge a LiPo in like 15 minutes. A small one, like something like this would take, but you could also take this battery tray off and convert it to an XT30 if you wanted to fly this little guy on some type of huge 1S battery. But why would you do that? Just run the 18650. But again, guys, make your comments down below, and hopefully you enjoyed this honest review and flight test today of the Happymodel NLR. I was super excited to get this one out. Another micro long range in my collection, so I'm happy to have this one. And it performed decently well. Very easy to work on. 4-bolt configuration on the bottom to pull this off. But make your comment down on this video below, and get entered in to win that Flywoo quad this month. Super awesome that we're giving away a Flywoo with DJI on board. So gosh, about a $300 and some quad we're giving away again this month on the channel. And congratulations again to Pilot Shark for winning last month's September's giveaway. And this month's giveaway is going to be super awesome. But you can check out the links down below for this one, guys, if you'd like to grab one of these. This is the ultimate quiet cruiser quad that none of the Karens will bother you for flying. No one came up to me and said a thing to me, which was super cool. I enjoy those days of flying FPV without being hassled by the man or the Karen. Take care, guys. I'll see you on the next one.